Thank you for joining us and welcome to another edition of Answers Network. I'm your host, Alan Cardoza, and if this is your first time watching or listening to the show, know that every Monday from 11 a.m. to noon Pacific time, this show will bring on special guests that can inspire, educate, and in some cases entertain, while bringing answers and options to making our lives happier, healthier, and more successful. And I'd really appreciate it if you could all do me a big favor. Please forward one of our shows to your social media group, and know that sharing my show and others like it that focus on improved health, happiness, education, and success is one powerful way that we can make a positive influence in the world together. Now, our guest today, Jarret Keene, earned his PhD in creative writing at Florida State University. He is currently an assistant professor in the English department at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas, where he teaches American literature and the graphic novel. Jarret has written numerous books and guides on various topics, including a travel guide, a rock band biography, and he's edited short fiction anthologies, including Las Vegas Noir and Dead Neon, Tales of Near Future Las Vegas. But his current book, Hammer of the Dogs, is a literary adventure filled with high-octane fun and introduces the world to a 21-year-old protagonist with a high-tech skill set and warrior mentality. Interestingly, this is set in the wasteland of post-apocalyptic Las Vegas. So this book celebrates the courageousness of a younger generation in the face of authority, while exploring the difficult choices of a young woman must make when her back is against the wall. It's a coming-of-age story, a transformation, and maturity that I think will keep readers of all ages turning the pages with great anticipation. Jarret, welcome to Answers Network.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
Well, I want to tell you, as I started looking into some of the things that you've written, it's a pretty broad area. So I think my first thought is, tell us a little bit about you, what got you interested in writing, and then why a post-apocalyptic Las Vegas?
Right. Well, I learned to read from comic books as a kid. And so I've always been drawn to, stories of the fantastic with a visual flair. I loved illustrated stories, illustrated novels. Anything with pictures really drew me in. I grew up in the 80s. There wasn't a lot of stimulation in those pre-internet days. We had to go to the spinner rack at the local bodega and find some comics. We had to, entertain ourselves to a large degree. TV was limited. I didn't grow up with cable or anything. I just had some rabbit ears on the television set. Whatever we could grab, we watched. And what we did end up watching was, I thought, wonderful. Everything from the A-Team to Knight Rider to just adventure stories, but also a lot of cool and interesting things with choreography like Solid Gold, Dance Fever. I really enjoyed those moments watching TV with my grandmother in Tampa, Florida in the 80s. But I don't think I read a serious prose only novel until maybe college. I always kind of faked my way through it, read the Cliff's Notes, the abridged versions, the movie adaptations, try to get around having to suffer the boredom of having to read a text only book. But gradually over time, I really took to it. I love prose novels today, and I can't think of anything better to do than to kick back with a book, or better yet, to write my own. But eventually I became an English major in college because I just really enjoyed reading. And what I did was I sort of compromised to a degree. I read a lot of different things, but in my English classes, we studied, the great works, Shakespeare,
Right.
Jane Austen, Hemingway. And so this was all wonderful. But, when you graduate with an English degree, there wasn't a whole lot of prospects out there. So I sort of doubled down. I got my master's in English. And then, it was so much fun just reading and teaching part time that I decided, hey, why not a PhD in English?
Mhm.
And then after that long process, 7 years or so, I found I was employable in not many fields. So I moved to Las Vegas and became a journalist. And I wrote about anything and everything that I could for money. I was a bar critic, I was a food critic, film critic. I was a music writer. I would go to concerts and review them. I would interview bands, profile touring acts coming to town, and that led me into an even stranger employment scenario where uh, magazines like People and Us Weekly would hire me as a freelancer to stalk celebrities at hotel casinos and find out what they were up to, what they were eating and drinking, who they were with, what they were gambling on, and that was very interesting. Uh, and then I had a friend who had left the newspaper I was working for. It was one of those free weekly newspapers that used to be very popular in the 80s and 90s and maybe even into the 2000s. But my friend had found employment writing internal communications or employee-centered propaganda for the casino companies here in town.
Oh,
And he said, "Jarrett, you can make twice as much money writing an employee newsletter as you can, as you do currently working for the weekly paper." So I said, "Well, I gotta try that." And the benefits are great when you work with a casino corporation here in Las Vegas. So I jumped over to corporate communications, and that gave me a whole new insight into Las Vegas. I got to see back of house, if you will, the
right.
scenes behind the scenes. I like the character Lash in my novel Hammer of the Dogs. I toiled in the bottom of the basement of Luxor, and I went everywhere behind the scenes in these properties. I saw how the wave machine works at the Mandalay Bay beach. I went and hung out with the horticulturalists, the people who garden the beautiful plants there in Bellagio, the conservatory. And I was so really taken by this world within a world. And but the thing that got me really thinking about writing all these different kinds of books was the fact that that it's just when you're in Vegas, everybody has this mythic idea about the city,
Right.
and so they're very eager to pay you to report on these events and these everything from Electric Daisy Carnival to or nearby Burning Man or
Or
you
the
know
Mob Museum.
museum and anything like that. And so national magazines would pay me to cover these events and cover these um, locations.
Mhm.
And so it was very easy for me to, for example, write a guidebook to Las Vegas. It was very easy for me to write about a rock band like the Killers, who were spawned here in the neon and the dust. And
Mhm.
from there, I just kept writing about Las Vegas related enterprises, and it became sort of a secondary career.
Yep.
The whole time I wanted to be a professor, but there were no jobs until finally I managed to apply for one, um, and it was a teaching position here at UNLV. And I felt very lucky, because I finally got to put my PhD to work. But this was 10, 15 years into my other careers as a entertainment writer and a corporate communicator. But I kept publishing, I kept writing, and eventually I landed the job that I always wanted. So I felt very lucky. But of course, in order to transition from teaching faculty to research faculty, which is what I accomplished a few years ago, you have to publish or perish. The tenure track gauntlet is real, and you have to make sure that what you write is vetted, peer reviewed, etc. So I wrote a post-apocalyptic adventure story because I really didn't want to contribute another kind of boring academic analyses of Faulkner or Hemingway or anything like that. So I wrote my own story and submitted it to a university press, and to my surprise and delight, they accepted it for publication. Uh, that book is Hammer of the Dogs, and I'm so glad to see it out in the bookstores, at least here at the the Barnes and Noble's locations and the indie bookshops, and it's a good feeling, a sense of accomplishment.
Yeah, and I've got some questions in regards to the book, but it was interesting again as I was learning more about you and the things that you've written, and it's interesting you use the term you double down. When you were having trouble finding work, so you double down, so you got your master's, and then you're having trouble finding work, so you triple down,
Yeah,
get your PhD,
yeah,
and one of the stories that I found, which is called "The End of the English Major."
yeah,
And it was a recent story in the New Yorker and the New York Times about the huge drop in enrollment in English departments at colleges and universities all across the country.
yes,
So as a professor who doubled down and tripled down in this area, but you're a professor now of both American literature and graphic novel, why do you think students are drifting away?
Well, there's a lot of reasons, but I think the primary reason, the one that I like to focus on, because I think it's what a lot of people, they think about it, but they don't say the words. But I think the humanities degree, the pursuit of a liberal arts degree, it's just not as fun as it once
Mhm.
was. Things have shifted, and the economy is different, and people are looking towards STEM degrees, science, technology, engineering,
Mhm.
mechanics. They want a guarantee that they'll have a job at the end of a 4-year program. And so I think the STEM has made a better argument for its existence than the humanities has. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that we are a little too focused on things like um, Shakespeare and Jane Austen and this stuff that is very important and very valuable, but we're not meeting our students halfway. Our students have other storytelling interests, other passions, and they're doing a lot of literary analysis on their own, whether it's through a YouTube channel or Instagram feed or podcasts or their zines or their online publications. They're not as interested in some of these things as we are, and I think that's really important because I remember, way back in the '90s as a Gen Xer, I was a literary trash huffer. I devoured Anne Rice's Interview with a Vampire. I loved William Gibson's Neuromancer,
Mhm.
Octavia Butler's, Kindred. But we sort of had to hide our passions from our professors. We had to study this other stuff, whether it was, Beowulf or, which is wonderful. But I'm just saying, I'm just giving these as examples. We were asked to look at Virginia Woolf's To the Lighthouse or James Joyce's Ulysses, and that wasn't really what we were passionate about. But you know, we sort of deferred to our professors. They were established. They were, super intelligent, super accomplished. And I think we ended up writing dissertations that we were only mildly interested in, while secretly continuing to read, Neil Gaiman or Alison Bechdel or whatever. We were waiting, I think, for our turn to remake the literary canon, the established works that you find on a college syllabus. And along the way, though, we did this weird thing that you may be familiar with, your audience may be familiar with. We devised these terms like guilty pleasure, genre literature, the graphic novel. That's
Right.
that's a fancy word for a comic book.
Right.
What's another one? Prestige TV. We came up with all these terms to lessen the shame of loving these stories that we were not supposed to love, really. As academics.
Yeah.
So we
I was
kind of
just,
yeah.
no, that's funny. As you're coming up with some of those terms, I'm smiling because, on the one hand, they're trying to come up with terms like guilty pleasure, but I also remember terms like, train wreck TV.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That was that. But you see, that's even represents a shift in what we, love and what we're supposed to love and what we in fact love. And I think along the way we handed over this idea of the fun, hands-on activities, methodology, pedagogy. We handed that over to the STEM people, and I think it was a mistake. I think what we should be doing or should have been doing is emphasizing the fun of writing a magazine article, writing brochure copy or catalog copy, of seeking out those kinds of writing assignments and securing work and getting paid, and figuring out the practicality of it all. What's practical about getting an English major? Well, it turns out there's a lot, because I've done it all. I've been the entertainment writer, I've been the corporate communicator, I've been the teacher, and now the professor. And I'm not sure there's any value really in writing these stuffy papers on an analysis of gender equality and Hemingway's fiction. I think that stuff is important, but I think the emphasis is skewed, and I think we need to show students that they can get jobs and write and publish and be validated with their humanities knowledge and degrees.
Now, I've got a question that's coming in. And again, I want to thank those that take the time to send in questions and instant message questions and such that's coming in. And this one says it is from Barbara in Los Angeles, California. Okay. It says, as a mother of a son and daughter, both of whom have entered college within the last 5 years, they have shared that they feel that they're being more indoctrinated than educated. Are we force feeding our students with politically correct books versus really trying to educate them about history as well as preparing them for the future?
Well, I think there is, unfortunately, a great deal of that. I mean, I think it's well intentioned. The idea is to provide students with different ways, or sociological ways, I should say, about analyzing stories and poems and plays and films. But again, I don't think that's fun. I think the fun arrives when you talk about things outside of beyond the sociological spectrum. To reduce literature to sociology, to politics, to as I said, those concepts of race, gender, and class. I think it does a real disservice, not just to the art, to the artist, but to the reader, to the audience. That said, I mean, I don't think you should be able to get through a program without understanding those concepts. I think they are important, but there is more than one way to approach these works, and I think we have to give students the real practical hands-on knowledge about how to write an article, how to write like a commercial article, not like an academic essay. I mean, like a piece that's going to end up published, somewhere. I think we need to lose maybe some of that literary activism and embrace more of the technical or professional writing side of it. And really, technical and professional writing, that's sort of like it's like a tertiary concern in most university English departments. They see the literary analyses as being the highest on the great chain of literary being. It's like uh, album reviewed way down here, and then analyzing the works of Proust or something is way up here. So.
Well, you mentioned that you were inspired by pop culture from the 80s.
Yes.
Yeah. What were some of your biggest influences as far as, people that you looked up to and in their writing and said, this is inspiring me to do more, to write more, or to expand more with your abilities?
Well, Alan, I know this feeling, this sensation of it's the 1980s. You walk into a library, you pick up a Stephen King novel, and you just lose yourself in the pages of this fantastic story. Nothing beats that. And his career goes back really before that. I mean, it's and that style of that experience precedes Stephen King, obviously, but the 80s was such a fun and liberated time. It's an era, it's a decade that's often maligned. The filmmaker, for example, Gen X filmmaker Quentin Tarantino dismisses 80s films as being, conservative and boring, and they don't take risks. And I beg to differ. It was a fantastic decade for science fiction, fantasy, adventure films. All the great works came out during that time. Everything from Empire Strikes Back to Conan the Barbarian to Blade Runner to to Dune. And I would throw in these critically dismissed works like Tron or Labyrinth, Legend, just Back to the Future, Goonies, Red Dawn. These were great films, and they were great films for kids.
Exactly.
And, they didn't coddle the young audience. These 80s movies, they had a hard edge to them, but they were also fun. I like to use the term bright darkness. A lot of they were moody, but also thoughtful, and in the end, the good guys win. That feeling of the end of Top Gun. It's actually a very sad and desperate film. The character Maverick is very troubled. But in the end, he and his friends triumph in the face of serious adversity and near death. And so that's the kind of filmmaking, storytelling. That's a kind of literary experience that I really treasured as a kid. And growing up, I found that we've moved so far away from that. Everything has become hyper political, super gloomy. You can see it in the color palette of today's films. Because of the CGI requirements, everything's got to be filmed darkly. Everything's steel blue, gray. It's all the same monochromatic stuff. It doesn't sing. It doesn't have the bright darkness. And so I wanted to write a novel that harkened back to that moment, and to get young people excited about stories. I didn't really even write this book for myself. I wrote it for my students, Hammer of the Dogs, and I wrote it with them. I presented a chapter every week to my classrooms, for like 15 weeks. I wrote a sizable chunk of the book that way. And I didn't do it to torture them or rub it in their face, or I wanted to just give them the how-to, here's how you systematically go about, with discipline and momentum, writing a chunk of a novel. And what I found, to my utter pleasure, was that they would join me. So my students participated in this and began writing their own novels and presenting the chapters week by week, or short stories, some of them poems. And they took great pleasure, satisfaction, and they found validation in this, which was even more important. And today, my students have gone on to publish some of these novels, whether through print on demand, Amazon's self-publishing platform, or they've published their short stories in literary magazines, or their articles have landed in local and regional magazines. But this is all very important because we need to not push them, encourage them to publish their work, because publishing and getting paid for your work are the ultimate validation. It doesn't have to be high profile, like this has to appear in the New York Times, or I need to get $300 for this review of a anime or a manga or something. It's not the money. It's not the prestige of the publication. It's just that small step that you take that puts you on a path of confidence and accomplishment. And that's what is really important, I believe, for students. So anyone who's an English major, I feel at the end of 4 years should have, a CV, a resume with listing their publications, commercial publications, not just, where they managed to publish their literary analyses as third author on an article. That's not what I'm talking about. I mean, like, on their own, publishing something that that's out there, that's recognized, linkable, printable, whatever.
One of the things that I really liked as I was learning more about you and and I'll call it a teaching style, is it reminded me of, I have a friend who's a professor and teaches filmmaking, and she involves her class. And I spoke to some of the classmates within that, that she was having work on one of her films. And every single one of them felt that it was the greatest piece of education that they got to any other class, because they were a part of something that their input mattered, and they saw from square one all the way up how this works. So, when you were talking about that, it was something that I had read that you did, and I just cannot tell everybody out there, the listeners, the viewers and stuff, if you have an opportunity to teach that way, please do, because that's really how people are going to learn.
And I was thinking about this too with respect to my high school years. I was a thespian. I was on stage in productions of Grease, West Side Story, Little Shop of Horrors, and that feeling that we were all participating in something, and we produced something, and we got on stage and we poured our little hearts out, and we sang our little songs, and we danced, and just that bond that we shared in high school is sort of eternal. When we catch up, every few years, it's like we pick up where we left off. We have that bond because we sort of, in some ways, went to war in a way. I mean, I don't know. We just have a camaraderie. We have a fellowship, and that's what I want to encourage too with these young people, is that if we all work together on getting our work published, if we help each other, workshop each other, network each other, give leads on publishing opportunities, share those with each other. I mean, it's invaluable. I mean, it's essentially a community, a writing network that we're creating. So and so needs a writer for this job, so and so needs an editor for this job. I mean, that's an amazing opportunity. And those, some of the friendships I've had since graduate school, I maintain today. And that's if someone needs a writer, they'll call me. If I need an editor for a project, I'll call them.
Well, I may be calling you.
Yeah.
So, I mean, our guest is Jarret Keene. The book is Hammer of the Dogs. We've got to take a break. but we will be right back. So stay with us. You're listening to or watching Answers Network.
Conflict International are experts at uncovering the truth. Our specialist team has decades of experience in providing a range of bespoke investigation and intelligence services to companies and individuals. Whether you need professional screening or background checks of employees, due diligence of potential clients or business partners, asset tracing services, or surveillance, Conflict International has a rapid response team on hand to get you to the heart of the matter. Our key strength is in our global capabilities. We can tap into an extensive network of trusted professional investigators based in most jurisdictions worldwide, enabling us to go almost anywhere a case takes us. Conflict International has decades of experience with a diverse range of skills among our team, developed from backgrounds in military and security intelligence services, as well as practiced lawyers. Visit our website today at conflictinternational.com to find out more about our services. That's conflictinternational.com. Global reach, local knowledge.
And we're back. We are talking about writing, but we're also talking about the enjoyment of reading and taking in stories. And so one of my questions, Jarrett, is one of the best known dystopian novels of all time is 1984, which, as you know, is George Orwell's terrifying vision of a totalitarian future in which everything and everyone is slave to a tyrannical regime led by, quote, the party.
Mm-hmm.
So many people believed at that time when this came out that much of what he wrote would come true.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on 1984? And do you foresee things in your novel being warnings or predictions of things to come?
Well, yeah, my opinion of 1984 is obviously it's a landmark novel, and I don't know if you are familiar with the story behind it, but he basically, the author basically put his health concerns aside to write the book and died, as a result of his efforts. I'm not a fan of the ending, of course. I don't see it as a triumphant book. The ending is heartbreaking.
Yeah.
I don't want to give it away, but you should definitely read it, but it will break your heart. So I don't know. I love the book, but it's depressing, and it's doesn't have the possibility for change or hope or
Right.
that Hammer of the Dogs, for example, offers. In some ways, with Hammer of the Dogs, I'm trying to offer a heroic response to technological, ideological oppression, which we are certainly undergoing today.
Yep.
And Hammer of the Dogs, I gave a reading here at the bookstore, and as I got on stage to perform a few chapters, read a few chapters, I was doing so with a backdrop of the Las Vegas Strip being cyber attacked and held hostage and paying tens of millions of dollars in ransom to get their control of their hotel casino machines, doors, gaming technology. I read today that it's estimated that casinos are losing like $5 million a day for as long as this cyber attack continues. I think Caesars paid the ransom, and the other company, MGM Resorts, hasn't yet. So, if you bring the Strip to a near screeching halt, I mean, just imagine what's in store later on for the rest of the country. It almost feels as if the attack on Las Vegas is just, dress rehearsal for something larger. And the more that we give ourselves over to the machine, to the internet, to the patient portals, and the the other, online banking, it's just a matter of time before it's all wrenched away from us. So Hammer of the Dogs I see as being maybe just a few moments ahead of what's actually going to happen, unfortunately. But the more that I, as an employee at the casinos, witnessed these tech conventions that would come to town, the more I became pessimistic about how much computers are actually helping us. The most disturbing convention is the one that really launched the idea for this book. It was there's an annual drone tech convention that occurred in Vegas. I think it still comes here maybe every other year. But to sneak into this convention with my employee badge and survey the drone tech weaponry, it was jaw-dropping, and it was dispiriting. A lot of it has to do with the way everything is connected. So, for example, the tech sector, higher education, military industrial complex, foreign governments, all of them working together to kind of shape this drone arsenal. Law enforcement, all of them together, trying to get the most lethal, most effective surveillance technology out there. To me, this is it's not a good thing. It's not going to work. And they come up with these stories that explain why drones are necessary and useful. And there are, good uses for drones, like any tool. But ultimately, all the funding for drone tech comes for its more military applications. And so that's really horrifying. And I think you see it everywhere now. There was some recent story about a conservative politician being booted out of a theater, like some kind of musical performance in Denver somewhere. And I was totally horrified by the footage that they managed to capture. Like they followed this politician from their seat, through the halls, through the foyer, to the parking garage, and it looked like, it reminded me of the casino surveillance that I witnessed here in Las Vegas. So we're always being surveilled, we're always being tracked, we're always being monitored. COVID, of course, ramped that up to a great degree. So I just really I don't see good things coming from this increasing reliance on technology. Hammer of the Dogs is my way of kind of giving young people a chance, an imaginative scenario where they have the freedom and the skills and the determination to kind of fight back in a way that allows them to be human again.
And again, I don't want to give away anything in regards to the book, but I think I would add to that it points to the fact that you can make a difference.
Yes.
And I think that's something that is not being presented to the population. That you can make a difference. It's being presented more as, you'll follow us and you'll do what we tell you. And too many people are just doing that. And if you are the person that says, wait a minute, I'd rather think this through, or I'd rather really take the time to see how this benefits everybody, you become ostracized.
Yeah, or worse.
Or worse, yes, or thrown out of the theater or whatever.
Right.
So I like the fact that it is a young person. There's many times in which I'll get involved in very deep conversations in regards to what's going on versus maybe what has happened in the past. And I usually end up getting to a point when I'm talking with younger people, is saying, these are now becoming your decisions.
Yes.
And so I'll give you my input, but I'm not asking you to run with what I'm saying, because I'm not going to be on this planet as long as you are.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, so the fact that this protagonist is young, she has great courage, but again, as I say, it shows one person can make a difference if you stand up for what you believe in, and that was one of the pieces. And like I said, without giving away much, one of the pieces that I thought kept me turning pages.
Yeah, well, she's also a hero who's flawed and makes mistakes, and she gets captured by the enemy warlord, and but learned something as a result of that. I didn't want to write like the perfect,
Perfect character.
yeah, who jumps into, immediately knows how to do everything perfectly and
Mm-hmm.
picks the lightsaber and is an expert, Jedi Knight or any of that nonsense. The character Lash struggles to find her place and her role, and struggles to learn the extent of her true powers. I wanted that to be part of the fun and the adventure of the story. I was looking back towards great writers like Edgar Rice Burroughs, who created, Tarzan, and
Mm-hmm.
John Carter, Warlord of Mars, and others. And I wanted to, obviously Lash owes a lot to Ellen Ripley from the Aliens franchise, or Sarah Connor from Terminator, or, Katniss Everdeen from.
That's who I thought of. Yeah.
Yeah. And, but I wanted to make it even somehow more aggressive, harder, with the drone tech really at the forefront, because I really see drones as and AI as being one of the major challenges that this next, or the younger generation, is going to have to be. My sons, for instance, who are teenagers now, will have to confront. They're going to have to really figure it out and find a way to fight back. And the only way to do that is by embracing the technology, not by running away from it. They're going to have to learn to take control of it, and understand it, and not be passively controlled by it. So I guess in many ways I wrote this book not just for my students, but also my sons. I wanted to give them a blueprint for resistance.
But you just brought up AI. One of the things I was going to talk about as well. How do you think AI will affect the graphic novel?
Well, in my graphic novel classes, I've had students submit work, comics that are generated with AI art, and they're pretty fun. They look great, but I tell them, you can't publish it because it's plagiarism. The AI art generator, grabs stuff from the internet and creates a composite. I don't like it. I mean, there are precedents, like found poetry. You would create a poem from, pre-existing texts or documents, and you would reassemble it on the page. So there is a tradition of this kind of collage or composite work. But to me, we've got to go back to the organic. And the other challenge too with AI is papers that my students turn in. If they're going to write a paper, I have to use a software that checks for AI generated texts, and that's no fun. So why not have them do assignments that AI can't help them with? So in other words, maybe we should stop having our students write these papers about that provide literary analyses of Faulkner, Hemingway, Virginia Woolf, and maybe let's analyze some newer stories, some more recent works, comic books, films, what have you, because the AI doesn't have time. There's not much out there for the AI to grab or to scrape from the internet or from databases. And so that's why I really want to encourage my students to generate their own work in a way that can be published, and that they can get compensated for their work. That's the only way to defeat this AI situation.
Well, and that's part of my question, because I know that I listened to a podcast, I think it was Ed Milet's show, and he had an AI specialist on, and they were talking about the fact of what professions did he see that were going to be decimated by AI. And they said one of them was, any sort of graphic design was, that industry was 90% of it would go away. But he talked about just writing in general, that because AI has now learned how to educate itself, that there will become a time in the near future to where it will be able to write a novel itself.
Yeah.
Putting many people out of business, really.
Yeah.
So it's kind of my thought is that, at what point, as somebody who doubled down and tripled down, at what point when you're talking to your students, do you say, make sure you have a backup plan because this is coming?
Well, I mean, that's exactly it. When you become a writer and you have a beat, like a subject, you'd be surprised how often that industry will embrace you because you've been writing about it. If you write about fishing, for a fishing magazine, that magazine might introduce you to people in the industry who design, rods or boats or, fishing gear, and you can find a way to maneuver into a position in that industry. Um, uh, when I was working for the casino company, I had so many opportunities to publish, to be what would you call it, a copywriter for that industry. Gaming magazines, gambling magazines would reach out to me to write articles about their newest slot machine or their newest technology, or to have, there's no shame in like working for a company that produces slot machines if you can make a great deal of money. But what you need is to get your feet in the door. And I think writing for an industry can help you understand that industry and get a job within that industry. Right? So that to me is the backup.
Yeah.
If you're going to write about boxing, I don't think you should become a boxer, but I think you could, all the stuff that's behind that industry, like the boxing gloves, the training gear, the ring itself, and everything else. There's so many opportunities out there, and you can even launch your own line of boxing, gear, merchandise, apparel, equipment. That would be wonderful as far as I'm concerned. So I think writing can open a lot of doors. You just have to know where to look, and I think you'll always have a job if you understand something well enough to write about it.
When you made the analogy of boxing, I thought, maybe I'll be in the corner, but I'm not at that point that I'm getting in the ring.
Better to be the cut man than the person who's cut.
Exactly.
No, I mean, I think that's what everyone needs to do is to look at the world in a brand new way. That's what writing allows you. That's what writing offers us. That's what great literature offers us. And I think it can inspire you to do anything. Good writing should not just inspire you to become a writer or to become a professor. It can inspire you to do other things. And, when I read, a great book about working as a truck driver, sometimes like, hey, maybe I could be a truck driver, and that would be awesome. So this is what I'm saying. It gives you windows into other people's experiences, and
that's a great point, because I know that with many of the writers, that I like, part of it is because of the knowledge that they go into in a particular area. So if all of this is taking place in a vineyard, they've done their homework. They have given so much information on the whole wine business, and I feel like I came away with a small degree in in the wine business or whatever. Along with the entertainment, I still feel like I've learned something.
Because writing gives you that like internal perspective, that introspective quality that when you watch a reality TV show about house flipping, you realize, even as you're watching it, this is BS. This doesn't work. It's not real. This is all staged. It doesn't work. But writing allows you to get into the headspace, and to figure out, what's going on in that person's heart or in that person's, soul, their mind. Why are they doing this, and how are they finding success? So, I mean, to me, it's just the perfect medium, the perfect vehicle for understanding a subject.
Well, Jarrett, I've just glanced up, and unfortunately, we've run out of time. So again, folks, the book is Hammer of the Dogs. You can get it pretty much anywhere books are sold. Highly recommend it. Again, once you start, I think you're going to be turning pages. And so, Jarrett, just real quickly, is anything else you'd like to add? And what's next?
Well, I would like to add that I think a book like Hammer of the Dogs is perfect for young readers, high schoolers, college kids, young
Mhm.
people. So if you want a fun yet thrilling read, pick up my book and see what you think. What's next? I'm working on a series of Western novels. So I'm going to try out the Western genre and see how that goes. I've always been fascinated by old, Westerns from the 50s, 60s, and 70s. And of course, I love the neo-Western as it's being presented in TV shows like, 1883, 1923. These are
Mhm.
incredible shows. And I want to see if I have something to say on it in that style of writing.
Well, let's make sure and touch bases after this on that subject. For many years, I belonged to a group called the Algonquin Cowboys,
Oh,
which is a group of actors, producers, writers, directors, and stuff that go back, and it's all about doing westerns. So, if there's anything I can do to help you from a research standpoint or whatever, uh,
yeah.
I think
I'm ready.
I may have the people that can help. So,
Yeah.
Jarrett, thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate what you're doing, and again, so that everybody else out there understands, we're just not talking about a book or selling a book. We're talking about, if you get this for your teenager or whatever, get them something that is going to help instill or reignite that passion for reading. Because if you can do that with your young person, I think you're going to do them a great service.
Yeah, I agree. Absolutely.
All right. Thanks, Jarrett.
Thank you.
All right. And for everybody out there, please visit our archives of past interviews at Answers Network, or you can just subscribe to the show through Apple Podcast, iHeartRadio, Spotify, SoundCloud, YouTube, Rumble, Spreaker, and so many other popular podcasts. If you like what you hear, leave us a review. I want you to know that it helps us reach more people, and we greatly appreciate it. The next time you're on Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter, please remember, stop by our page. Oh, let me correct that, not Twitter, X now. And check out some of our latest posts. If you like them, please like us and spread the word. For everybody out there, be good human beings and be with us again next week on